All right, so that was Where Is My Man by Eartha Kitt. It was one of a large number of songs which came out in the 70s and 80s and was written by European homosexuals. They really cornered the market during that period. Particularly, Jacques Morali co-wrote that song. He was the same person who you might know as one of the founders of the Village People. Eartha Kitt was actually a supporter of the LGBT movement beyond the extent a lot of her contemporaries were, because her contemporaries who were also popular, like Donna Summer, whoever else, relied on gay people for popularity to listen to their songs, but she was one of very few who actually spoke out, and she did an entire interview with the same public access television program, Emerald City, which I assigned not too long ago for Boys in the Sand. The real only segue from that into Myra is that both are very campy, and I suppose we're a couple short right now, but might as well start the discussion now. So, does anybody have, I suppose you all saw the movie, right? Hi, how are you? This is our newest member of the class, by the way, official member.
Howdy.
Haley. And this is Henry, Julian, and William. And we're, is Sean coming, or?
Yeah, he's grabbing an energy drink, but yes.
Good to know. You just missed the Eartha Kitt, nothing much. So I would still recommend you make up the Eartha Kitt video at some point, because it's very, very fun. So yeah, we watched Myra Breckenridge, the first movie that we've watched so far in this course to actually be released in mainstream theaters, for better or worse. I suppose some of you, did anybody get a chance to do the reading as well? Henry, what did you think of the reading of the book?
I really enjoyed reading it. I love her voice.
It's really
It
something.
has some flaws, you know.
I might contest you on that point, but
Yes, as I recall, you said it was your favorite, number one, right?
well, I have a specific emotional connection to that book, so I won't say anything bad about it. But obviously, this is unfortunately a free country, so everyone else is free to share their opinions. But yeah, very interesting book. And William, you got around to the book too?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. You have any background with like Vidal's his whole like ideas? You don't really know where Myra's beliefs start and Vidal's beliefs sort of end, because like Vidal had a lot of like similar. He's obsessed with Hollywood. He's kind of a misanthrope.
Absolutely, yeah, and I'll get into that later as well. The similarities between him and this character that he's created in Myra Breckenridge. Anybody who read the book, what did you think of? Were there any differences between the movie and the book? Anything substantial that changed betwixt the two mediums?
And they started out with the sex change. You know, it wasn't.
That's true. Yeah. So the sex change, for those who didn't make it to the through the book, the sex change in the book is the twist at the end. Myron is introduced and talked about throughout the book as Myra's late ex-husband, and you only find out in that scene where Myra takes off her panties and shows the full transformation that this is actually the same person, and the marriage is actually some next level incest. So I guess that kind of stuff is legal in Mexico. I'm not sure, but anybody who just watched the movie, I mean, having watched it, obviously it's different from Boys in the Sand in a lot of ways. And it's also, in a way, even more underground in its methods of storytelling, especially with the constant cuts to film. But was anybody able to piece out a thesis to the movie or a point to the movie? Maybe we could work towards one together.
Definitely kind of felt like it was generally about violence in Hollywood. I mean, you kind of had those like weird flashes of just like a nuke blowing everything up.
That's true. Those were some of my favorite elements as well, the nuclear bombs.
I think in general, I think that the central thesis is, well, the central theme is kind of about male violence in Hollywood, and Myra Breckenridge is trying to rectify that in her crusade.
Exactly, with some female violence.
Yeah, with some female violence.
So you have kind of two antagonists and two protagonists. Myra is one of the protagonists, of course, and then there's her inspiration. Ooh, her name is slipping me. Van Allen? Yeah, Van Allen. Letitia Van Allen, who's performed by Mae West. And then you have her two nemeses as well, Buck Loner and Randy, who both kind of represent the male ego. And her tool throughout the movie is sex. But I find the movie's portrayal of sex very different from Boys in the Sand, because, well, I suppose rather than going any further, did anybody else think that? Anybody else notice any differences in how sex is portrayed, what the movie says sex is?
It's a lot more cynical.
Absolutely, a lot more cynical.
Kind of portrays like sex as like inherently sort of violent. I mean, not inherently, but definitely a lot more.
Inherently, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, within the framework, there's really no sex for, reproductive purposes, and that's part of what Myra's fighting against is the growth of population, because it's just, it's one of the many ailments of 60s society, according to her. It's not really a matter of love either, and there's also some very clear power dynamics, especially in one particular sex scene, which we'll get to later. If you remember Boys in the Sand, there are really no dynamics of power when it comes to sex. Even in the third segment, if you'll recall inside, this is a segment where he's fetishizing somebody on the basis of his perceived strength and blue-collarness. And even then, they both assume the active and passive sexual role in different parts of the same segment. Whereas in Myra Breckenridge, sex is really just a statement and a declaration of power. And I think it's a good time to get into talking about the book and the author. So for those of you who don't know, Gore Vidal is one of the great American novelists of the 20th century. And he was really a son of the American aristocracy. To give you a sense of the extent of his connection to America's elite, his first name, Gore, is actually his mother's maiden name, which he took as his first name, and it's of the same family as Al Gore. And his mother was also close with Eleanor Roosevelt. There were a lot of connections. He even had family feuds with the Kennedys. There was, which got particularly explosive at times. Well, when it got really explosive, that wasn't him. But with a background like this, he had the potential to pursue a career in politics, which he haphazardly did. He ran for a couple of positions, but he really forswore any chance at being a political leader of America in 1948, when he was just 21 years old, some of our age, and he wrote City and the Pillar, depicted there, which was the first American novel to deal seriously with homosexuality. City and the Pillar released 1948, and it was very controversial, perhaps even more so because of the time it came out than Myra Breckenridge was on release. And he released a lot of historical fiction and a lot of other very highbrow works in between this and Myra Breckenridge. But in terms of Gore Vidal that you'll know today and you'll recognize, has anybody seen the movie Ben-Hur by any chance? The 60s
I need to.
epic? If you saw that one, basically there's a long part at the beginning of the movie, about 3/4 of the movie, where it's a really well-written homoerotic drama, and that's all Gore Vidal, and then they hired someone else to add Jesus in the last quarter. So that was probably his biggest movie. He also did the original script to the Myra Breckenridge movie, which we'll get into later. He did the original script. Has anybody seen the 70s movie Caligula?
Yes, I love Caligula.
Caligula, a cult
Wait,
classic.
He did this.
but-
Holy shit. Okay.
Well, if it's any indication of how much the movie changed between him doing the script and it coming out, he actually demanded his name be taken off the end credits,
Really?
which I probably would as well, as much as I love 79 released Caligula. He did a re-edited version though
Is that
recently.
the one that was re-released recently?
Yeah,
Okay,
if
I saw
you're
that, yeah.
Caligula super fan, I definitely recommend it because most of the footage and plot was cut out so they could make it shorter and include kind of random
Yeah.
orgy scenes.
That's the one I saw actually. That's the only one I
You saw the 3-hour one and not the.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
Well, just because that's what my local art house theater was showing. So.
Well, I guess it'll be a drop in quality when you watch the 70s one, but it is a bit faster paced. But anyway, I digress. I should be going a bit faster here. He also did. Sorry, one more movie reference. If you've ever seen the movie Gattaca, probably his least gay thing that he's involved in, but he's the CEO, the big scary boss man in that one. How's it going?
Hello.
This was a debate he did the same year that Myra Breckenridge was released, 1968, a debate outside of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago with, I don't know if you know him, but William F. Buckley was an American conservative who had a reputation for being very proper, very upright, and putting on, it's almost as if he was probably the only authentic transatlantic accent speaker. And this is probably the most notable moments.
You must realize what some of the political issues are here, and many people in the United States happen to believe that the United States policy is wrong in Vietnam, and the Viet Cong are correct in wanting to organize their country in their own way politically. This happens to be pretty much the opinion of Western Europe and many other parts of the world. If it is a novelty in Chicago, that is too bad. But I assume that to the point of the American democracy, and some people will Nazi. Shut up a minute.
No, some people were Nazi, and the answer is that they were well treated by people who ostracized them, and I'm for ostracizing people who egg on other people to shoot American Marines and American soldiers. I know you don't.
As far as I'm concerned, the only pro crypto-Nazi I can think of is yourself. Failing that, I would only say that we can't have.
Now listen, you
the right to
stop
say
calling me a crypto-Nazi.
Let's stop calling names.
You in the goddamn face, and you'll stay plastered.
Gentlemen, let's go.
Then you go Myra Breckenridge, go back to his pornography and stop making any allusions of Nazis to infantry in the last war.
You're not an actor, as a matter of fact.
So moments like that are very commonplace nowadays, but that was the first televised instance of somebody calling someone else a queer in a debate and saying they're going to punch them in the face. So if that gives you an idea of how provocative he was, and also the fact that Myra Breckenridge came up as labeled pornography in this. This moment was so influential, it inspired a documentary, Best of Enemies, as well as a actual stage play, which I got to see when I was in London, also called Best of Enemies, in which, ironically, William F. Buckley is played by a black actor, a fact which would probably have now lost a wheelchair rolling in his grave. Moving on to the movie itself, one of the first things you see in the movie, aside from the dance sequence and the transgender surgery, is this rotating statue right here, who is actually very important to the origin of the book, Myra Breckenridge, because it was this rotating chorus girl statue which Gore Vidal saw from his hotel room in Vegas, inspiring him to stay insulated and write Myra Breckenridge, as he said, start to finish in between two full moons. This gets into the point of who is Myra Breckenridge, aside from just a statue, because her character is actually much more, just as moving and three-dimensional as her inspiration. I want to, for those of you who didn't get a chance to look at the book, I wanted to read a couple of segments. This is her introduction to the reader. I am Myra Breckenridge, whom no man will ever possess. Clad only in garter belt and one dress shield, I held off the entire elite of the Trobriand Islanders, a race who possesses no word for why or because. Wielding a stone axe, I broke the arms, the limbs, the balls of their finest warriors, my beauty blinding them, as it does all men, unmanning them in the way that King Kong was reduced to a mere simian whimper by beauteous Fay Ray, whom I resemble, left three-quarter profile if the key light is no more than 5 feet high during a close shot, end chapter. This introduces 3 key elements about Myra Breckenridge. The first is her uncompromising feminine power. The second is her incredibly queenie love of Hollywood's golden age. And the third is her incredible delusion of grandeur. She was living in 1960s America, a sexually repressed period, which was terrified of communists. And her target is Buck Loner's Academy, a small insular academy filled with exactly the same people terrified of communists that filled the rest of America, except these are students in this overpriced fantasy land for delusional wannabe artists. And while she's in Oberlin, she makes incredibly provocative statements and leaving really no prisoners. And I wanted to go over some of her provocative statements. She talks a lot, for those who just watched the movie, Dr. Montag, her dental psychiatrist, makes a very small appearance in the movie, but she's actually the framing device for the entire book, the one who told her to write it. And Myra argues against the beliefs of her dental psychiatrist, who, unlike the film's psychiatrist, is much more like a straight man in the comedic duo. Reflecting on Montag's opinions, she says, Dr. Montag still challenges my theory from time to time. Once he spoke of the maternal instinct as something not involving power. But of course it does, and in the most obvious way. The teat or bottle is the source of life to the baby, to be given or withheld at the mother's pleasure. If there is any more fulfilling way of achieving total power over another human being, I have yet to hear of it. Of course, most people successfully disguise their power drives, particularly from themselves. Yet the will to prevail is constant and unrelenting. Take that charming, seemingly unaggressive man who makes apparently idle jokes that cause others to laugh. In a sly way, he is exerting power quite as much as Hitler did. After all, his listeners were not laughing until he made them laugh. Thus it goes at every level. My own uniqueness is simply the result of self-knowledge. I know what I want, and I know what I am. A creation of my own will, now preparing for a breakthrough into an area where, until Myron's death, I can enter only in dreams. Having already destroyed subjectively the masculine principle, I must now shatter it objectively in the person of Rusty, who has reappeared. So in this world, which we can continue to evaluate throughout the book, whether it's the real world that all of this applies to, or just her delusional perception of it, everybody is just in it for power, but she has a unique advantage because she's the only one who knows it. She's the only one who doesn't make any excuses for herself. And all the room that's taken up by cognitive dissonance in these other people's minds is dedicated purely to that drive for power. And part of the cognitive dissonance, the disguise of the power game, is ideology, which she ruthlessly attacks throughout the book. I know I mentioned Vietnam already, but she has quite a lot to say about Vietnam. She says the Vietnam exercise appeals enormously to the students. I mean, said one of them, if we don't stop them there, where they are now, they'll be right here in LA. To which I answered, this city could not be worse run by the Chinese than it is by the present administration, And frankly, if the Chinese could be persuaded to take on the job, which is doubtful, I think we should let them. Going on an extended rant about communism, she finally says, I would be only too happy to become world dictator, if only to fulfill my mission. The destruction of the last vestigial traces of traditional manhood in the race in order to realign the sexes, thus reducing population while increasing human happiness and preparing humanity for its next stage, which is never fully elaborated on in this book, but I shudder to think of it. She tears through ideology quite mercilessly, and really doesn't give a rat's ass about the coming communist invasion and the Cold War hysteria possessing people around her. And I know I've been talking a lot about race in this course, but I think it is very important. I'll mention it again with the next slide, because we hear obviously a lot, probably us more than most other generations are conscious of it because of Black Lives Matter. But if you see like an older Black American with graying hair, it's very possible that that person drank from a separate water fountain within his own lifetime. And it's kind of incredible to look at these books that came out within the lifetime of many people alive today, which were so provocative in their time for one reason, and are so provocative now for the opposite reason. So I guess content warning for some language I wouldn't use in interpersonal conversation. But she says a vocal minority are prejudiced, possibly because many young white males fear the Negro. Time and again, I have observed white youths inadvertently clench their buttocks at the approach of a Black man, not realizing that the legend of Negro size is just that, legend. The dozen or so jungle bunnies I have trafficked with were perfectly ordinary in that department. In fact, two were hung like chipmunks. Myra, incidentally, was larger than either of them, a fact which paradoxically caused him joy, not despair. The physiological origin of the myth was once explained to me by Dr. Monte. Apparently, the Negro penis limp is almost the same size as when erect, a phenomenon which, though it causes consternation in the shower room, brings no added joy to the bedroom. In this language, which is in equal measures flowery and obscene, she really pays no heed to these racist ideas, but in her own Breckenridge fashion, she sexually pathologizes racism. She looks at it not as a matter of, whatever arguments racists were making at the time about preserving the integrity of their children or whatnot. She's like, you're just scared that the Black man walking down the street is going to spread your buttocks and show you that he's bigger than you. And you can see why this book was so controversial on release to respectful American society and to the William F. Buckleys of the world. And this Freudian analysis really runs through everything she does, and it makes her come across as an impenetrable, indomitable character. She's purely a force, and she has no vulnerability. Is it still recording?
Yeah.
Perfect. It's got a good limit there. She has no vulnerability, and as the book goes on, we begin to learn the third dimension of her character, her late ex-husband, Myra. Myron, I'm not going to read this because it has no punctuation, so it's very hard to read out loud, but Myron was looked down upon by society, denied his own half of the academy. His uncle Buck Loner only remembers him in this passage as a fag and a sissy, and it's very vague anyway, just some sissy kid who was really into movies. In one of the most illustrative chapters in the book, Myra describes how Myron, her ex-husband, of course, this poor, put-upon man, was in fact very well hung, but he was a bottom. He wanted men to fuck him, and not just men, but straight men. And he wanted them to do it with their eyes closed, and he wanted them to do it reluctantly and for pay. And to the outside world, it seemed like a situation where he just wants to be used. But Myra, this liberating voice in his head, this Tyler Durden-esque alter ego, tells him, you don't want to be used. You want to use people. You want to conquer them. You want to withhold your magnificent penis from the homosexual and bring these heterosexuals into their area of discomfort. And you, even though you think you're just a victim, you are actually looking for power. and I can bring you that power. So the Freudian psychoanalysis extends to herself as well. This image pretty well represents Myron and Myra, I think. So there's Myra, the unconquerable woman, and Myron, the conflicted queer. And finally, Myron takes his own life, and Myra lives out all of his dreams, and her primary enemy in this dream fulfillment is Randy, the American man, prideful, masculine, adored by Marianne, and possessed of irresistible sex appeal. Randy is everything that ever hurt Myron, and all of the men who had ever abused him, and Myra takes her revenge with a dildo strapped to her, avenging Myron, who, in a completion of this cycle, there was Myron, the well-hung man who took it from behind, and now there's Myra, who's using a lifeless, inanimate dildo to take men from behind. And in the book, if you thought the movie was uncomfortable, the book is a 30-page chapter. That's 30 pages of dildo rape. And in the entire chapter, you kind of realize what Myra has been telling you all along. This is not about sex. As a matter of fact, in the entire passage, she doesn't once mention any physical feelings of her own. It's purely a systematic destruction of the American male. And once Myron is avenged, his uncle tries once more to kick him out of the will. But Myron never died, and Myra proves it when she takes off her pants and shows him where once was Myron's large cock, now there's Myra's feminine glory, and Myra's alive. And it would make a wonderful ending to the book, but that's not how the book or the movie ends, as we'll get into later. In fact, I prefer the ending that the artist went with. This is a book which has the rare honor of being as cancelable in 1968 as it is today, if for different reasons. It's incredibly provocative, but I always found it to be a very beautiful book. And a bit of personal backstory, I went several years without finishing the book in high school, and I found that I had, whether you want to attribute it to ADHD or lack of self-discipline, I had a lot of trouble finishing the books I started. And City and the Pillar was the first book that I finished. I just devoured it in a couple days in a while, and then Myra Breckenridge was right after, and I felt like almost this sort of like parasocial relationship with Gore Vidal, and I really think these two books let you get to know him more than his other ones, even though on the surface, I guess you had mentioned you felt the same to some extent. I saw kind of within Myra, you have the same outrageous character who called Bill Buckley a crypto-Nazi. You have the same guarded exterior and the same provocateur. But this book kind of lets you into Myron, who's the vulnerable self that's hidden underneath. And I wasn't alone in this view, because his actual friend, Christopher Isherwood, whose I can't remember if it was book. I think book led to the musical and movie Cabaret being made. For those of you who are gay, he calls it a very subtle psychological self-portrait, and I ended up agreeing with that opinion. So the question becomes, how do you adapt this subtle psychological self-portrait to the screen? And the answer is quite atrociously. The production of this movie, in fact, was a complete disaster. When the movie started, the idea was actually pretty good. They were going to have George Cukor, who was the filmmaker behind many 1940s Golden Age movies, the kind of movies that Myra Breckenridge was watching. Among them, coincidentally, was Gaslight, the movie which gives us the verb gaslight. Burl Ives and Bette Davis, other Golden Age of Hollywood actors, some of whom had previous working relationships with Cukor, were set to play Van Allen and Buck Loner. And Gore Vidal actually wrote a script for the movie. So it sounds like a great idea. You might be wondering what went wrong. Well, it turns out that they dropped the director, and then Bette Davis left, and then Burl Ives left, and then they didn't use Gore Vidal's script. And they picked up this new writer-director, Michael Sarn, who was an abusive misogynist and also an incompetent English director, not even an American, to adopt this quintessential American novel. And he'd only made box office flops beforehand. Van Allen was given to Mae West, who, in my opinion, was a suitable replacement. But she came with a lot of demands, being a 78-year-old diva. Yes, that's right, 78. And her demands included 2 musical numbers, which are completely not fitting for her character, and out of nowhere. And she also made a really unique demand that she only wear black and white for the entire movie. But she also didn't want other people wearing black and white. And you'll notice here a problem. Myra's wearing black and white. And Welch, who was playing Myra, was given a red dress, which she cut up into pieces and continued wearing her black and white dress. The same actress, or I'm not sure if it was her or the actor for Myron, but somebody was literally crying about the state of the script at a certain point to other people because of how many replacements for the worst had gone through. The actress for Myra Breckenridge was also crossing off pictures and stills where the actor for Myron, Reed, looked good, and having him come personally to talk to her about it. And when the film premiered, she herself was manhandled by people who took her to, by the way, her first viewing of the film was in the theater with the audience. And she was manhandled to prevent her from sharing the red carpet with Mae West, who didn't want that. So the amount of Myra Breckenridge psychoanalysis that could go into the production is probably no less than that could go into Buck Luner's Academy. To give you an idea for why Mae West was able to make all of these demands, these were some of her movies stretching back
when I'm good, I'm very good.
decades.
But when I'm bad, I'm better.
And always plays the same
I
character.
see a man in your life.
What, only one?
I changed my mind.
Yeah, does it work any better? When I'm caught between 2 evils, I generally like to take the one I never tried.
Now take care of these men.
Yes, give them all my address.
I am delighted by it. I've heard so much about you.
Yeah, but you can't prove it.
Haven't you ever met a man that can make you happy?
Sure. Lots of times.
So she's got a ton of one-liners like that in a ton of different movies. She's really thought of as a pre-Hays Code actor for obvious reasons because, you know, those were the decades where you could just make movies about a dozen men trying to fuck you. But it became, you had to at least put a little effort into disguising it afterwards. Nobody was really happy with how the Myra Breckenridge movie came out. Everybody involved in it seemed to hate it on release. It was a box office bomb. And I assume nobody had heard of the movie before I had brought it up. But I'm probably one of its only living fans. And we have the gift, I think, of hindsight, and we're, you know, all born 30 years after all the drama. And I think we can look at it from a clearer vantage point and look at what it did well. And I think one of the things it does well, Myra Breckenridge is a difficult thing to adapt because so much of it is Myra's voice, and so much of it is her internal monologuing. Should I keep the phone away?
Yeah.
This
one as well?
No, keep that one, please.
Are you sure?
The movie uses interludes of films from the era that Myra Breckenridge watched constantly in the same way that she constantly references movies in the book. And even though they seem jarring, a lot of them are pretty purposeful. You know, for example, when she says her name, and when there's when Mae West is getting hammered in her office bed. There's literally a piece of wood crossing the screen that is surprisingly long. So, I think they did that part well. And there's also a lot of the internal psychology and the relationship with Myron that you can't really convey in the way the book did. So this movie has Myron be alive. This is from the scene, which is probably one of the most interesting scenes with Myron, where Myron ostensibly is getting sucked off by Myra. But as we, the audience, know, he's pleasuring himself, but psychologically it's an interaction of two people because his transgenderism is also split personality. And if this wasn't confusing enough, he continues to pleasure himself as Marianne begins describing household fruits to him. And to round it all off, it ends with a clip of champagne busting open from a 40s movie. So you kind of get here an example of how a movie could adapt that relationship, where you could see, Myron is the one who desires her. Myra is the one who's getting it for him, who's actively giving him pleasure in this scene. And his imagination of her betrays his perceived sense of her innocence, perhaps mental simplicity as well, as Myra mentions. It's also a movie that's criticized a lot for having less social commentary than the book, but it does have some, like the scene where two men are arguing, Buck Loner and his lawyer, about obscenity in movies and how it can't be in front of kids, while police are beating a man behind the lawyer and people are fucking behind Buck Loner. And I think one of the most effective scenes is the end, Myra standing on top of the desk, the symbol of masculine control, and showing what the audience already knows. I suppose they could have done a crying game type situation there, but, to each their own. But again, as I mentioned, that's not how it ends. The movie actually ends in black and white. A car accident, and now his tits are gone. Myra's gone, it seems. And he's kind of settling and lingering into this realization that he's on his own now. And I think the purpose of this movie is to frame everything you just saw. Because the movie leaves you with this idea that this was just a temporary experience, that you got to see all of Myra, and even though, you wouldn't have seen her again if the book had just ended, you almost kind of mourn her in a sense. You're almost sad. It's a pretty tragic loss. And you wonder how much Myra has changed her. For those very curious, the sequel book, Myron, has Myra Breckenridge trying to and occasionally succeeding in taking control over his body while he becomes a pro-Nixon conservative closet Republican, and they all end up in the trapped in limbo in the set of a fictional movie from 1948, and all obscenities are replaced with the names of Supreme Court justices who banned obscenity. The movie, I would say, arguably has zero long-term influence, or really short-term influence, aside from a hit to the bank accounts of people who created it. And perhaps giving me the opportunity to give this class. But I think Myra Breckenridge has had more influence. We'll see how the idea of this trans woman anti-hero was played with throughout the 70s by other people, and especially one movie in particular. And it even extended into mainstream movies. Does anybody know Brian De Palma? the director of Scarface. He made. Do you know the movie I'm about to mention?
Is it Dog Day Afternoon?
Dressed to Kill.
Oh, okay.
Dog Day Afternoon was the guy who did 12 Angry Men, I think. The French guy.
Oh, really? Sidney Lumet?
Yeah, Sidney Lumet. It was, but he did. What was it? I do love Dog Day Afternoon, so this isn't stated as criticism, but he did change the details of the wedding to make it less campy because he thought that viewer wouldn't be able to take campy gay bank robber seriously. So they played him a bit more straight. But
Was Dressed to Kill the one about the trans woman who murders a bunch of people?
yes, Dressed to Kill is about the trans woman, except the trans woman is also battling and killing her male alter ego in a similar way to Myra. And I just want to leave you with this scene.
Living with opioid addiction can be a struggle. Suffocate with counseling is for adults with moderate to severe opioid addiction.
I didn't think it could do ads on PowerPoint. That was really,
That's great.
Or being
Can I
treated
even-
with
One of
morphine.
my favorite fun facts is that there's only two
Suffocate
countries in the
may
world
keep
where
you
this is
with
legal.
recovery.
It's
Suffocate
us
may
and
keep
fucking
you
New
with
Zealand.
medicine buprenorphine.
The only
And I
two
just-
places.
Protect your dreams.
Bro.
American Family
a lot of
Insurance.
build up to this fucking scene.
Yeah, I know.
Living with opioid addiction can be a struggle.
3, 2.
I'm debating if it's worth it.
Wait, the skip button is right there.
It doesn't let you touch the skip button.
You're like
on
4
PowerPoint,
minutes, by the way.
bro. What was I trying to
Just pull it up on
show
YouTube
you?
itself.
This was it.
Escape from the PowerPoint.
Yeah. Well, your skin softens.
If you
Yep.
you gotta close the PowerPoint.
I see. Thank you very
Suffocate
much.
with It's getting harder and harder to tell.
It is getting harder and harder. I agree.
See, there's some men and women too who think they're born in the wrong body. They're called transsexuals. And all they want to do is have their sex changed. Right?
Good.
Well, if you're a man that wants to become a woman, you take female hormones.
What do they do?
Well, your skin softens, you grow breasts, and you don't get hard anymore.
Right.
Sure you want to know about this?
Yeah, it's giving me some wonderful new ideas for a science project. I mean, instead of building a computer, I could build a woman. Out of me.
Great idea. In that case, I'll give you all the details. The next step is surgery. Let me see if I can remember the exact word that Levy told me. Oh yeah, penectomy.
What's that?
Oh, you know, they take your penis and slice it down the middle.
Yeah, that's, I thought it was.
Then, castration, plastic reconstruction, and the formation of an artificial vagina. A vaginoplasty to those in the know.
I thought Ellie just put on a dress.
Oh, he did, and a wig too. But you see, that's no good in bed when you gotta take everything off.
So that's how the movie ends. Kind of interesting choice. But yeah, I hope to see you all Friday, because Friday we're doing a screening of LA Plays Itself. I also want to assign the short film Sexful, so I'll do Sex Garage. Sorry, Sexful is different. Sex Garage, I will do a screening which is optional in Sunday, same time as the other one. And no one needs to come to that, but if you just want to be uncomfortable, you can come along. And if you thought Myra Breckenridge was hard watching, wait until you see LA Plays Itself. And I hope you have a wonderful week.
Thank
Best of
you.
luck. Thank you.
There's this guy I follow on Letterboxd who's like an adult film historian, and for some reason he gave Sex Garage 1 star. Like, I don't know what it could do to make
Did
it hate it that
Did it get
much.
a review?
No, he just gave it a 1 star.
I would give it at least 2. I think the intro is slow, and the intro gives you the impression it's not going anywhere. So I feel like if you leave 1 star, you have to just watch the intro.
Oh, mate. But he like watches a lot of other things and like gives them all like the time. Like he has like 5,000 movies long.